Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and welcome to today's webinar on strategic relationship management brought to you by the Foundation for Strategic Sourcing and State of Flux. We have people that are currently joining, but I wanted to go ahead and get started so that people didn't think that we were not on schedule here. My name is Scott Neidhold. I'm on the staff of the Foundation for Strategic Sourcing. And today we're joined by two presenters from State of Flux. State of Flux, if you are not familiar with them, is a global consultancy that is based in London. Their focus is on strategic relationship management and sourcing. And we're fortunate enough today to have two of their principals with us. John Newton is executive consultant and head of learning for State of Flux. John is responsible for developing and delivering learning for State of Flux's clients. John has a master's degree in education. He is a fellow of the Learning and Performance Institute and is qualified as a performance coach. John has over 25 years of experience in adult education and learning. Prior to joining State of Flux, John was Global Sales Learning Director at the NCR Corporation. We're also joined by Chris Thompson from State of Flux. Chris is Executive Consultant and Head of Strategic Sourcing for State of Flux. Chris has more than 15 years of experience in the procurement world, both in non-food and food FMCG businesses. Chris is responsible for leading the transformation of procurement organizations globally. Prior to joining State of Flux, Chris had a number of different global assignments with both SC Johnson and H.J. Heinz. So Chris is very familiar with the kind of work that we do and the kind of clients that we deal with both on the customer and the supplier side. Again, it's a pleasure to have these gentlemen on here, and I am going to turn the presentation over to John. We are likely going to have people joining us, but that shouldn't be an issue as we press on here. So without further ado, John, your show.
Thanks for a great introduction, and good afternoon or good morning to everyone, depending on whether you're calling in from California or the East Coast. It's good to see you dialed in today and joining us, and we're looking forward to telling you a little bit about what we know about strategic relationship management, and most importantly, using it as a lever for driving collaborative customer-supplier relationships. Let me just tell you what the key aims of this session are. We've got two aims. The first one is to outline the essentials of the strategic relationship management business case. Because without the business case, we really don't have any momentum, so it's an important foundational table stakes issue for us to address. And then secondly, we're going to showcase the new strategic relationship management learning program that we have developed. It's specifically focused at CPG companies and their contract manufacturers. So this is a learning program that speaks to the needs of the customer and the supplier, the buy side and the sell side, if you will. Just in case you're wondering who's on the phone at the moment, then as you heard in the intro, it's Chris Thompson and John Newton. I'm the good-looking one, but Chris is here with me as well. So just so you know who's the other end that's talking to you. So between us, we should be an effective tag team. What do you think, Chris?
I think that should work fine, John.
There you go.
Morning, afternoon, everybody.
Okay, let's keep moving and see what we've got here. The first thing we want to focus on is, before we even talk about the learning program and what it's meant to achieve, is the business case that the knowledge and skills that we're focusing on. What the business case is that is focused on achieving. So let's take a look. Just to credentialize this for you. State of Flux has been doing global research into strategic relationship management now for over 6 years. We've been active in this field in over 10 years, actually, working with some of the leading global and European companies, and we're increasingly doing work in North America as our reputation grows and the research that we do gathers more and more momentum. We tend to do a theme each year. Last year we did a theme on luxury brands. The year before that we looked at the full relationship in terms of the 6 pillars that drive it. And so what we'll do is, to help us credentialize the business case, we'll use some data that we gathered from the research. So we're not just making this up. What we've done is we've captured the best practices that we've seen from over 500 companies that have taken part in our research. And there are some real gems about where the business case is in this data, as we'll show you. This model that we use to identify what the key components are that make supplier relationship management and strategic relationship management happen is based on this 6 pillars model. The 6 pillars are business drivers, stakeholder engagement, governance of the relationship and the accompanying processes, the people and skills agenda, information and technology that helps us work smarter rather than harder, and then finally pillar number 6 is relationship development and the business-to-business culture that we need to foster a collaborative relationship. So we're going to anchor some of what we say against these pillars because it aligns very well with the key messages that come out of our research. So the first one we're going to look at is the business case, pillar number 1. So a key question for us as we went out to our survey respondents is to ask a pretty fundamental question. And that fundamental question is, what is driving making the time, trouble and effort being put into doing strategic relationship management with key suppliers or in key accounts, depending on which aspect you're looking from, either the buy side or the sell side. The feedback that we got is kind of summarized on this chart that we're looking at the moment. We've distinguished between 2 levels of response, either very important or important, denoted by dark blue or light blue, as you can see on this chart. But top of the list, you kind of expect this from anyone in procurement, right? Top of the list is cost reduction. But close behind its heels is risk management, risk reduction or risk optimization as some people like to call it, cost avoidance, driving service level improvements, improving your competitive advantage, right through to supply chain efficiency, supporting sustainability, and getting preferred access to scarce resources in the market. Chris, looking at that research and putting an FMCG or CPG kind of angle on it, what do you think of the drivers which will resonate most with this industry?
Yeah, thanks, John. I mean, I guess you said it yourself. We work in an industry within CPG that is incredibly competitive, really tough environment. So no surprise to see cost reduction right up there, and it would certainly be right up there for CPG in my experience. However, what I would add to that is that I've also seen lots of those other business drivers there as well. So I've seen programs and initiatives focused around simplification across the supply chain. I've seen programs focused around risk, that's for sure. We work in an industry where ultimately we're all here to serve consumers and customers, and we can't afford for our products or our services to fail. And having a robust and secure supply chain is absolutely key to that. So quite often I've seen strategic relationship management deployed specifically around managing that risk between a key supplier and key customer. And especially now that we see quite a lot of integration there, so thinking about CPG branded businesses and contract manufacturers where the relationships can be particularly deep and particularly broad, and the lines of responsibility can be shared sometimes.
Okay, what about some of the things that we see in other industries, like, for example, the financial sector? One of the key drivers there is, for example, regulatory compliance. I know we've got on our chart here better contract compliance, but to what extent does regulatory compliance work in this industry? And how about the effect of the more outsourced the relationship is, the more value that SRM can deliver?
Well, it comes back to that whole mutuality point again, and truly understanding each other's businesses and also the broader supply chain beyond it. So I'll come back a little bit again to customers and consumers. But, you know, regulation plays an absolutely key role within CPG, and from a customer and supplier perspective, you know, for example, working together to ensure compliance, working together to drive improvements in standards, working together to anticipate and proactively manage changes in regulation that are coming up would be an absolutely clear business driver for strategic relationship management.
Interesting. The other thing that strikes me particularly for this industry as a driver, and I'm surprised it's as low as it is on this chart, and I think if we did this again in 12 or 24 months' time, I'd like to see it go up a bit, is the driver around for example, improving speed to market. You know, quite often we talk about procurement and it's kind of cost out, savings methodologies, etc. But if a supplier and a customer can work together and bring a new product to market, getting it out to the consumer base, maybe a month, maybe 8 weeks ahead of what could originally be planned, so that we can measure the benefit in terms of early revenue stream because of bringing it to market, then that's an example where it's not cost-based, but it's absolutely something that a good collaborative supplier relationship can make happen, isn't it?
It is indeed, and it's SRM driving top-line revenue growth for the business, and that's what gets attention at the C-level in the organisation. Absolutely right.
Right, and I think the key thing that time to market or revenue growth illustrates is that value, the value of doing SRM can be quantified. A lot of people struggle with it. And you know, that was another question that we used in our research. We asked people, so this first one is just about financial benefits. You know, because if we want to start investing in strategic relationship management, it requires a lot more effort to be put into the relationship. It also requires the supplier to put a lot more effort into the relationship. And anyone that knows how a supplier relationship works will tell you is the more you ask the supplier to do, the more you're increasing the cost of having you as a customer. So that's, you know, that's an important aspect from those points of view.
Right.
So let's look at this data here on financial benefits. We actually went out to our respondents and said, who are doing the survey, what value can you expect above and beyond contract value? So this notion of contract value is important because the contract is defining what should be materializing in terms of the relationship. And you know, if we were talking about achieving that, then we're really talking about contract management and performance management, in effect, to get what you were paying for. This question is asking, what could you get above and beyond what you're paying for by putting the effort into this additional work called strategic relationship management. Now, it's interesting, like a lot of people, nearly 50% of the survey respondents actually chose the response, I don't know, which illustrates one of the issues we see as a consultancy. People find it really difficult to quantify the value. The thing is, it can be done, and we'll be showing that in the learning program. But the thing that catches my eye here is around 10% of people, well, just maybe 12% were saying between 2.1 to 4% above and beyond contract can be achieved. And just about 10% of respondents were saying more than 8% can be achieved. So, you know, if we're talking about just pick a small contract like $40 million US, 8% of that's a significant number, right? Chris, how do you think this opportunity to realize financial benefits resonates or aligns to what can be achieved in the CPG industry?
Yeah, thanks, John. I mean, I think, you know, once again, probably the most immediate and the most common source of financial benefit from SRM within CPG does come back to that reducing costs through better understanding that broader supply chain, through working more collaboratively together. For example, through I've worked on, you know, sort of packaging areas where we've looked at understanding supply chain better to improve forecasting, to improve planning together, to reduce lead time, to help with inventory management. There's clear benefits there for both supplier and customer. really quantifiable, really clear financial route. Again, though, what I would say, as programs develop and as programs evolve, those benefits tend to evolve as well. And again, some of this is still kind of emergent stuff, but we talk on this slide about non-financial benefits. I'm not sure about non-financial. I think maybe slightly more difficult to quantify benefits might be a better way to put it, because these are really key differentiators. So some of the stuff around here in terms of access to scarce materials, particularly within CPG, we've probably all been in a situation where a particular material or packaging substrate or whatever is in short supply, and we've either been the beneficiary of a good relationship in that we've managed through that collaboratively with the supplier, or perhaps on other occasions we've been in a slightly different situation where that scarcity has existed. And so to me that is perhaps slightly more difficult to quantify, but nonetheless it's a significant benefit to our business. And a number of these kind of broader benefits, as I said, they're more likely to evolve and emerge as the relationship grows and develops over time. And we sort of talk about a number of these together in terms of customer of choice benefits. So really, nothing more complex or sophisticated than understanding that on the buy side you're getting the focus that you should have as a customer. You're getting the resources that you should have. You're getting the time and effort and energy. You're getting the projects done. And then from the sell side, from the supplier side, you guys are getting the audience. You're getting the appropriate level of trust and openness and the things that foster that environment of collaboration. So, financial benefits, yes, and quite often in the beginning that's where the focus is, not always. But those broader, non-financial, let's call them less quantifiable benefits, moving towards that customer of choice piece tends to become increasingly important as organisations get more sophisticated in SRM.
So it's kind of like you reap what you sow, isn't it? If you put the extra effort into the relationship, at the point where you need the supplier to go the extra mile, or the supplier needs the customer to, if I could say, cut them a bit of slack, then in those sort of situations, the fact that both parties are chosen to invest in the relationship and build a collaborative working environment as opposed to a kind of like collaborative working environment is like one notch above a cooperative working environment, which is one notch above a compliant relationship management kind of situation. Then it is important that a lot of the extra mile benefits are difficult to quantify, but nonetheless are there in the last few feet where people deal with people, shall we say. Okay. So let's move the focus onto governance and process at the moment. I mean, this all sounds great. We can see some business drivers like getting a product to market early, like taking cost out collaboratively. We can see that we can potentially quantify and measure the value if we get the metrics right and the measures appropriate to expect somewhere around 4% above and beyond contract value, which is definitely worth the time, trouble and effort. So the next question, I think, which lives in the governance pillar of the model, is actually doing that with the right suppliers. There's no point trying to do that with a supplier that's treating you as a cash cow or doesn't see you as strategic, for example. So if we know the business drivers are there, the next issue is let's make sure we choose the right buy-sell relationship. I think that the easiest way for me to illustrate this is using a couple of segmentation pyramids. Okay, so here's the first one. If you're on the buying side, you should be familiar with this concept, where you can take your entire supply base and you can stratify or segment it according to how much you spend with each supplier, how critical the supplier is, and how much risk the supplier puts into your supply chain. So that spend criticality risk is a pretty safe way of building a segmentation pyramid. And what you end up with is at the top the most important suppliers, the ones you spend the most with, the ones that are most critical to your business, and the ones that could potentially be introducing more risk. A lot of organisations will do a slightly more complex, and rightly so, a slightly more complex approach to segmentation, where they'll also factor in what's the supply market like. Is it very easy or difficult to find a credible alternative to a current supplier? And even the acid test question is, are we seen as strategic by our supplier? It's that kind of aspect of reciprocity in the relationship, isn't it? So we're really thinking about our most important suppliers and just making sure that we address both the customer and the supplier aspect of this. If you're on the supplier side and you do any form of strategic account or major account management, then you'll be familiar that the sales side does account segmentation too. You know, any sales organization worth its salt will know which are its most important accounts, which ones are strategically important to you. They represent a significant revenue stream, and it's an attractive customer. They buy the sorts of things you want to take to market, both now and in line with your long-range plan for your product strategy, let's say. So buy side does segmentation, sell side does segmentation in order to understand who the most important suppliers or customers are in the relationship. And so what we really need to do is, as well as having the right business drivers identified and the right value release identified in the sites, we need to make sure we're working with a supplier who's capable of delivering value above and beyond contract, either by helping us take risk out, by being able to, as we said, for example, help us get a product to market earlier, or able to have the flexibility in their supply chain to help us operate in a more lean and effective way, while still retaining the benefit of the business and the strategic relationship. For those things to happen, compliance is not enough. Compliance to a governance model is not enough. Cooperation is great, but this is about true collaboration built on trust and business synergy. So segmentation, an important table stakes issue. The last thing we'd like to tee up is the complexity of the relationship itself. We're going to dive into pillar number 2 here, the whole aspect of stakeholder engagement. Here's a pretty generic chart for you, but it basically shows the buy side and the sell side. And I mean, from a CPG perspective, Chris, these are pretty complex relationships, aren't there? There's service delivery, there's performance management, there's executive support. It's a pretty wide and a deep relationship we would expect to see if we mapped it out in the CPG world.
Yeah, absolutely, John, and highly cross-functional. I mean, we've identified a number of key sort of roles and functions there, but we're talking about quality people, engineering people, R&D people, procurement, of course, as well, but then also in the case of contract manufacturing, quite often marketeers as well, and even salespeople. So, from all sides of each side of the relationship, there's, as you said, there's a high level of complexity there, and there's a real jigsaw that needs managing quite carefully and quite deliberately.
I kind of like the air traffic controller analogy for this slide, actually, because if we're the let me just get this highlighter working here. If we're looking at it from the supplier relationship owner's perspective, there's a number of moving parts around them. This is the acid test of a virtual team, cross-functional, cross-business. No one reports to you directly, but you need to exhibit an awful lot of influence. And similarly with the counterpart, on the sales side or supplier side, it kind of typically hinges around a business director or account manager for the relationship. And so those two key players really are the ones that can mobilize the relationship. They have to make sure that they've got executive support at a higher level on both sides, and they have to ensure that they've got operational support in each of their organizations on their respective sides. And so what you end up seeing is we can actually build quite a complicated model that requires us to have insight. So for example, the customer side, they need to understand the supplier's business, not only in terms of their products and services capability, but also how they operate, how they come to market, which includes how they do account management, so that we can work to a common agenda and use that as the basis for building trust. And similarly, if we look at the supplier side, the so-called sell side, we see a lot of things going wrong just because the account manager doesn't understand how procurement works, don't understand the buying process, don't understand the implications of not responding to RFPs properly, don't even understand the consequences of performing correctly in the governance in an SRM program. So, you know, a key focus for our learning here is to help each side understand the table stakes of what makes the relationship work. And there's that famous saying, right? 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey, says, seek first to understand. And there's a lot of understanding that can make a collaborative relationship work very effectively if we look at the other party and seek first to understand. Okay, so let me see if I can just remove all my drawings by clicking on this, and then we can move on. So we've set the stage in terms of what the drivers are, the potential benefits that we can see, and what the nature of the beast is. To make it happen, it's going to be making this cross-functional, cross-business relationship happen. What's the learning program like that we've pulled together to deliver that? Let's have a look. So here's the program map, kind of 30,000-foot view, if you will. As you can see, we've got 4 modules which are focused specifically on the customer, the buy side. And those 4 modules address what we believe the key enablers are, the table stakes, so that the buy side or customer organization can understand how to manage the supplier relationship management, strategic relationship management environment better. Similarly, we've got the sell side or supplier side curriculum, and as you can see from the topics there, understanding procurement as a strategic function is number 1. This element of this combination of 4 units is designed to help the sell side think the way that procurement works, so again we can establish this common ground to build trust and a working relationship. And then thirdly, in the middle, we've got a set of modules which are focused on customers and suppliers. So whereas the customer modules are there for customers to attend and wouldn't really make sense for a supplier to attend, and similarly the supplier modules are there for a supplier to attend, and it's, well, I mean, procurement already knows how procurement works, so there's arguably, so there's no need for procurement to attend those modules. But then we've got these joint modules where we believe those are modules where, whether you're on the buy side or the sell side, whether you're from a supplier organization or a customer organization, we would be happy to see both constituents represented on those modules we've got, because you can see from the topics where the common ground is, you know, joint account planning, collaborative management of the supply chain, and creating value collaboratively. You can see how it's we help each party seek to understand the drivers of the other side, and then give them the common ground in this third set of modules. So what we can do here is take a quick look at the component pieces. So, for example, on the customer side, we're really focusing on 4 areas. First of all, we've got the whole life cycle of a supplier relationship put under the microscope. This is taking a beginning to end approach from how you onboard a supplier into supplier management, doing the management on an ongoing basis, and even, if it's required, how to exit the relationship effectively. A prerequisite of doing supplier management effectively is to do effective contract and performance management. You know, you need most organizations are familiar with and see the value in a scorecard, but what would a balanced scorecard look like that actually fosters collaboration? And what would a contract look like if some of the clauses are written so that they're balanced and would incentivize both parties to work collaboratively? There's a lot of conditioning and foundational things that can be done, but if we can get the contract and the performance measurement done effectively, it can set the stage for effective strategic relationship management and make the other actions that we want to do a lot more effectively. Module number 3 is all about supply chain risk, helping you include and incorporate SRM techniques into the supply chain, identifying the key risks, identifying which risks you'll have to live with and which ones can be actioned through working with the supplier, for example. And then lastly, the governance model. What are the rules of the road that you need to put into place to set the stage for making SRM work more effectively? That's the focus of our customer modules. If I just look to the other side, to the supplier modules, again, we've got 4 of those. The first one is helping the supplier's sales organization become more effective in building the relationship with the procurement function, understanding its drivers, what some of its key measures are, and how it's driven to deliver strategic value in the business. So there's some important takeaways there which can be applied immediately to a live relationship. Aligning to the strategic sourcing process is module number 2. I think the issue we're addressing here is most major account management organizations will have an account management methodology, an account plan, and how they engage the supplier. And that's really kind of driving the agenda from how you want to work. The issue to drive collaboration is, how is my supplier trying to work? We know how we sell, but what does the buying process look like? What are the key decision points in the buying process? And how can I align my sales process to work the way that procurement wants to buy? Again, you can see that if you know that, and that is essentially what we reveal in this module, there's immediate benefits in terms of the quality of interactions you should have with a key set of stakeholders in the customer's organization. The third one is an interesting one, how to respond to request for information and request for proposal type initiatives. Again, it's knowledge of procurement. They're following a process and trying to gather some key information. They're in effect running a shortlisting process from who are all the potential suppliers we could do business with, to who are the probable ones, to who are the ones that we could actually select based on product feature function capability, and then also willingness to engage in the potential for relationship quality as well. And so what we do in this module is show you how to get the balance between feature function and technical differentiation, as well as relationship differentiation, again, to set the stage for collaborative working. And then lastly, how supplier relationship management initiatives can actually be an advantage in a major account environment. We show you how SRM can work for you to do collaboration, as opposed to be something that's used just to drive control, for example. So those are our supplier modules, and they do generate a lot of value. And then these 3 modules that we can have people doing together, there's some pretty obvious topics once we understand the other party. The first one is, how do we do joint account planning? You know, there is a lot of common ground between an account plan done on the sales side and a relationship plan done on the buy side. So in this module, we show where the common ground is and how you could just work together and have one plan, a joint account plan, which drives collaboration and transparency in the relationship. Okay? Supply chain risk is our second theme here. If we're going to talk about supply chain risk, and assuming that we've explained the basics, the next thing to do is to work on supply chain risk together. Anyone that's had any background on Six Sigma and value stream analysis will instantly get the value in collaborating with everyone that knows the various elements of the supply chain and ask them the questions. What value is being added, what value isn't being added, and how could we eliminate waste and drive greater efficiency? We should be doing that around the table together, and so that's why we've got that as a collaborative or joint module. And then thirdly, pursuing this desire of quantified value release. In this module, we'll show people how to actually plan and run value release as a program. So again, an obvious key takeaway there where the proof point will be the value of the plan that you put together. And that's a key point. We've structured each of these learning modules so they have a tangible, visible output. They're not all theory. Each one of these will, in its own right, even if you do one module as a standalone module, it will add value above and beyond the relationship that you've got. So those are the modules that we've got. The last thing that we wanted to show you is if you signed up for one of these modules or we did the training, how would it work? But the key thing is, as we see in most situations, face-to-face learning is very difficult in today's economic environment. People can't afford the air travel, people can't afford time away from the office, the so-called opportunity cost, etc. And also, training is competing with the time that you've got available in every busy person's calendar, right? We just can't afford the time away from the workplace, so it's important to be able to integrate learning and working more. Now, a lot of us are familiar with doing distance learning or online learning using online tools such as the one we're using now, for example, for this conference. And these kind of things have some value, but when we put the program together, we have a number of requirements. That was to do online learning in this kind of virtual setting. We needed an easy-to-use interface. We needed to be able to deliver PowerPoint, obviously, to do some briefings and tutorials. But we also wanted to incorporate some rich media into the session, videos and other dynamic media. We wanted to be able to do interactive workshop-type activities. Imagine in a live classroom, you would want to put people together around a flip chart and do a brainstorming activity with post-it notes, etc. Not very easy to do with WebEx or an environment like that, but nonetheless, for us to do learning online effectively, we need to get people collaborating as they learn. And we need to incorporate a whole range of things. So as you can see, we think a typical online meeting has an easy-to-use interface. We can share screens. We can deliver PowerPoint, as I am now, but to do anything more than that is difficult. What we are going to show you now is a new platform called the Virtual World, and it's the Virtual World that we will be using to deliver this training program. So I could show you some screen dumps of it, or maybe just to kind of live on the edge a little bit, I'll flick over to a different window where I've got my login set in ready to go. I'm still sharing my screen, so what I'm actually going to do is to log into the virtual world. By the way, if you don't have a login, you can just click enter as a guest, but some strange things will happen if I do that. So I'll show you what I mean by strange in a second. So I've just simply put my name in. I put the password in that I've been allocated. This is what a learner would do to enter and to join one of our online learning sessions. And I'll log in. I would normally click allow to allow the system to access the speakers and microphone in my laptop computer. And that's important, is because I can converse with other users in the virtual world just by talking into the microphone and listening through the speakers, kind of thing. So here we are. Well, I'm in the virtual world, and as you can see, all I've done is logged in, and I'm here as an avatar. I'm moving around. That's my little legs moving there. And if I don't like how I look, everything to control this environment is just like everything these days. There's an app for everything, and I've got an app for changing my appearance. So let me customize my avatar. I'm feeling particularly risky today, so I could let me see. I've always wanted to be a blonde, so we can go over there. I think I should be dressed a little bit more formally, so I'll choose that, and then I'll apply that, and hey presto, there's my avatar. Now I need to jump over to the training room, so let me just go over to the room that we need to go into. In actual fact, we've got the training room set up on a tropical island, so let's hop over to there. As you can see, it loads pretty quick. I'm now on the island training room, and here we are. I'll just take a look around. You can see we really are on a tropical island. If I look over the balcony here, you can see the ocean is ebbing and flowing gently. The foliage is nice and green. And it's a small point, but if you could imagine it, you could have the training environment looking like you'd like it to look. And you can see other people in the environment. You will see their avatars too, so you'll be able to interact with them and just talk to them. I could go into this training room. You can see that we've got a room set up here. It's quite a big room. Imagine I've got 16 people all logged in at once. I could get a bunch of people working around a flip chart. Here's one that's in progress. And we can put post-it pads on the screen as easy as right-clicking on it, choosing the post-it, clicking where I want to post it, and then just putting, I'll just write some pretty flippant text at the moment. I'll just put, hello, this is my comment, and there you go. If you can't read it, you just right-click on it and zoom. And then we can zoom right in and see what's going on. If I think I've put my comment into the wrong place, I can move it to the right place, and I'll stick it over here. I can zoom back out, and hey presto. So you can see that I could easily have 16 people on a course, split them into groups of 4, and give them an activity to do. So that the training that we can deliver is going to be a lot more than just being PowerPointed for 90 minutes. And you know, that's a key point I'd like to make here. The way we've structured the program is each of the modules I showed you, each of those building blocks as part of the curriculum, they're delivered over the course of a week. So just for argument's sake, on the Monday you would join the session for a 90-minute briefing and activity. Through the middle of the week you'd be given an assignment to work on, and when you'd completed that assignment you would email it into me as the instructor, or you could even post it into the virtual world, and then we'd get together on Friday for another 60-minute session, and we could then do a follow-up briefing and close out that session. So each session takes a week, but during the week it only consumes 90 minutes plus 60 minutes for the assignment plus another 60 minutes, 3.5 hours, right? 3.5 hours embedded into your week, and a lot of what goes on in that week you can control where and when it's done. You could come back into the virtual world at 9 o'clock at night when the house is quiet and finish the assignment then if you wanted to. And who knows, it's happened in the past. People have done just that, logged in at 9 o'clock, seen someone else's avatar in the virtual world, and they've just collaborated and done the assignments together, so to speak. So there you go. We could spend hours just playing around in the virtual world, but if you sign up on one of the course modules, you'll actually get access to it and be allowed to play and go through an orientation activity to teach you the basics of how to use the interface. We find that orientation activity just takes about 10 minutes, and then people become addicted to it. Some people have told us it's more interesting than what they've currently got on their PlayStation. But I guess you would say, well, maybe I haven't been buying any decent games for the PlayStation. Who knows? But hopefully that gives you a flavour of what the environment is that we will be using to go beyond death by PowerPoint using online tools. So let me just quickly go back to my slides. I just wanted to show you how we've structured the program. So here's each of my modules, and here's how I was outlining how we do an instructor-led live session, followed by case study in your own time, submit an assignment. That's just to help us understand that you can apply the learning to a live supplier or a live customer environment, and then we'll wrap the session up and give you credit for completing it. So there you go. We've taken you as a kind of tag team. Chris and I have taken you through what kind of value drivers you could pursue using strategic relationship management, and what the key value is that you could monetize or quantify from it. Some of the table stakes issues, like choosing the right supplier and recognizing the key things you have to learn is how the other side operates so that we can collaborate and work jointly together. We've given you a bit of insight into what the learning program itself looks like, highly modular and very easy to do alongside your day job, fitting it into a busy schedule. And then finally, the interactivity that we've built into it through using a virtual world type interface, immersive 3D virtual world, as opposed to a pure screen sharing type environment. So I hope that's been of interest to you, and we'll just pause now and see if there are any questions that anyone would like to have for us to respond to.
Yeah, thank you, John and Chris. And I'd like to open it up for questions. And the way I'd like to do that is you should have a little hand icon on your panel. And if you have a question, if you go ahead and click that, I can see it, and then I can unmute you, and then you can go ahead and ask John or Chris your questions. So if anybody has one, please go ahead and click that, and we'll get started with any questions. Okay, Rob Chichester, so you have a question?
Yeah, Rob Chichester here. How you doing? Could you just please quickly re-review the duration of each of the modules? I know you're going through it quickly, but as far as the amount of time that each one would take, I know it's a weekly event, but what is the overall commitment on time?
Hi, Rob. Yeah, thanks for the question. It's great to help us clarify. We've used the slide I've gone back to as a template. We've designed each of the modules so that they require this level of commitment. So on the first day of the week, people would log in and take part in an instructor-led online session in the virtual world, and the duration for that would typically be 90 minutes. And we would try to we would schedule the time for that to fit into what works best for people. Maybe it works to schedule it around a kind of lunch and learn kind of time frame. A little bit difficult to organize when you're taking in East Coast and West Coast Pacific time at the same time. But obviously we'd be very sensitive we would look at who's enrolled on the program and what makes best for that group of enrollees on the roster. That session, that 90-minute session, would end with a challenge or an assignment to go and apply a key principle from the course. It might be to build a stakeholder map for the relationship, for example, and identify the key players. Key players would include who can say yes or no in financial terms, in terms of strategic alignment, technical aspect, risk aspect, end user experience, that kind of thing. You'd be given the templates and tools to do that as some key takeaways. And in that time window, we think the activity should require no more than 60 minutes of your time, and we'd like you to email it back into us sometime before the last session. And then finally, just to wrap up and give people feedback on how they completed the assignment and to consolidate some of the key learnings, there would be a further 60 minutes on the Friday, typically. Again, we would take a look at who was enrolled and what the best profile would be. We have to recognize that some organizations have a policy of finishing at noon on Friday, etc. But as a general principle, we're looking at 90 minutes at the beginning of the week, 60 minutes in your own time to complete the assignment, and then a further 60 minutes towards the end of the week to fit this program in. And we're hoping that that's a lot better than having to go and fly somewhere, attend the session for a day and then fly back. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely does. I appreciate that. And can I ask you, is this something that you foresee in order to make it effective, at least for these sessions, that you're going to have somewhat of a balance between the supplier and the customer attendees, or these are going to be completely independent? And let's say even if you had only suppliers sign up for this, you basically have a knowledge base that's going to make it useful for them without having further input from the customers? Another
good question, and I'm glad you asked it of us. Thank you. Yeah, we were very mindful about that right from the beginning. So I've gone back to this earlier slide to help me to try and answer your question completely. The customer modules, we anticipate that only people on the buy side would get value out of attending those. And similarly, the supply side modules where you're learning how procurement works, etc., we would expect those would only work effectively for people on the sell side, with the account manager and the sales organization, etc. But the joint modules, where we said, what we're really saying here is, it doesn't matter if people from the buy side, the customer side and the supplier side, if both families of students, if both families are on those courses, we're not segregating. It doesn't mean that we can't run the course if there isn't a balanced mix. We could have all procurement people on this course and tell them about what effective joint account planning is so they can go and play it. And similarly, helping salespeople understand what joint account planning looks like, taking into account the customer's perspective. So it doesn't really matter. We could have all buy-side people, all sell-side people, or a mix. The training would be just as effective. But you know what? It would be particularly magic if, picking a supplier relationship, the buy-side and the sell-side in that relationship said, hey, in the interests of building a collaborative relationship, let's both do that module together for fun. And to me, that would be pretty powerful, but we're not dependent on that happening, if that answers your question, Rob.
All right, good. No, I appreciate that feedback.
Okay, thanks. And we appreciate the question.
Either John or Chris, as you look at people within organizations that should attend this, how would you describe the different roles and responsibilities on both the supplier or the buyer side where this training might be most effective and be most powerful?
So I'll go back. You can answer the question, Chris. I'll just go back to the stakeholder map slide to help us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in the thanks, John. I think in the most obvious sense, then from the buy side and the sell side, it's those guys who are going to be the relationship leads, the most accountable for those relationships across each side. Thank you very much, John. However, I think given the nature of the way that these truly collaborative relationships tend to develop and what we talked about a few minutes ago in terms of this slide and how this jigsaw fills itself out with different people, different functions and different roles, there is absolutely a place for those who get involved in managing the relationship from an operational perspective, those who get involved from a functional perspective. So who's running the R&D interface from the customer side, who's running the R&D interface from the supplier side, the quality guys, the supply chain guys, the engineers, absolutely. So I think at the broadest, and again that's how this SRM is going to be really effective with all these stakeholders in there. It's anyone within that stakeholder group, for sure. It's the relationship leads, the accountable execs, and those who will be in the thick of the action, if you like, in terms of each side of that relationship. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, what we're really highlighting here is anyone in the core team that has a stake in this relationship working is in the target audience. We tend to think of a cross-functional team in terms of who are the core team members, the ones that are involved or have a stake in the day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter service delivery and account management or business development of the relationship. But there are a bunch of people kind of outside of what I would call that core functional team, who might be expert advisors or expert contributors, someone from legal or HR, perhaps, who probably, they don't need to know this because these key players in the centre are kind of managing it. But anyone that's in this cross-functional team that I've outlined here, if they're involved in managing the relationship, managing service delivery, and the counterparts on the customer side, they would get value out of the training. And of course, what you've noticed is we've deliberately made the training highly modular, so people can pick and choose the topics that are relevant to them. You don't have, unlike a traditional course, you don't have to consume it all at once. You could do the modules that make the most sense and are timely and current to what's happening in your relationship this week, this month, kind of thing. So hopefully that answers the question. But
that's very helpful. Let me ask one that was fielded in here. In today's environment, economic environment, you're finding that the relationship between suppliers and customers often gets frayed as the customers ask for more and more cost savings, benefits, etc. Do you see SRM in that context as being a tool that people want to rely on now to try and get extra benefits out of a relationship, or are people shying away from that?
I don't think they're shying away from it. The organizations that we work with, what we're seeing is, and I'll just stay with this chart and I'll stay with my highlighter. What strategic relationship management allows you to do is, if the relationship is getting frayed, let's assume it's getting frayed at the operational level. You know, it could be missing on-time delivery targets, or it could be other kind of delivery failures, for example, as an illustration. What it allows us to do is to put a box around that operational issue and elevate the conversation up to the relationship and the strategic level. At our quarterly or our annual supplier review, we can black box that issue and just say, thinking about the relationship and the longer term benefits that we've got of working together, how do we work to make life better for both parties? And allow us to kind of move beyond some people that are getting entrenched or taking positions in day-to-day issues, and allow us to elevate the conversation up to a more collaborative conversation at the strategic level between both businesses. So it allows us to have more flexibility in the relationship by shifting the agenda according to what we're trying to achieve in the longer term and separating the signal from the noise, kind of thing. Hope that answers the question.
No, thank you. It does. How about any other questions from the audience? If you just go ahead and raise your hand, I'll call on you and unmute you so you can ask. I do want to mention that we are recording this webinar, and we will make it available via the F4SS website. John and Chris, I don't know if you have any plans to make this available on your website as well, but it will be available on the F4SS website so that you can share with other people in your company or colleagues that might be interested.
That would be good, thank you. Okay, it looks like we've reached the end of our time. Certainly Chris and I would like to thank everyone for their time today, to make time in your schedule and to let us share our insights into value creating strategic relationship management and the learning program that we've brought together working in partnership with F4SS to put something new and differentiated into the marketplace, both in terms of what we're covering and how we're delivering it. So from this end in the UK, in London, from the grey London in the UK, we'd like to wish you all the best with your strategic supply relationships, and hopefully we'll meet you in the virtual world at some point in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, John and Chris, thank you again for an excellent presentation. I also wanted to mention to the audience that registration for the modules is available on the F4SS website. I'd encourage you to go in and to take a look at that. If you have any questions about that, please let myself know, Lisa Shambro, or any of the leaders of the TAC team, either Todd, Kent, or Todd. So again, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and everybody have a good afternoon or good evening. Thank you.